Treaths Multimedia Ministry.
Everybody wants freedom.
And you shall know the truth. The loud cry of the third angel's message to the world.
Everybody wants freedom. Freedom to teach. Freedom of speech. We have a constitution with freedom of religion. Respect our rights. Protect our rights. We ask the present government to make no bad amendment. Respect our rights. Defend our rights. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants freedom.
Grace and peace. This is the Treaths Multimedia Ministry, and welcome to our program, And You Shall Know the Truth. My name is Cynthia Odin, and we are entering into a new series called The Rights Forum, in which we will be discussing the rights, freedoms, liberties, and republicanism. You are therefore invited to watch, listen, learn, and receive salvation. May God richly bless you. And now I present to you Brother Westmoreland from Bougain.
Greetings of grace and peace once again, and welcome once again to our program, And You Shall Know the Truth. I am Brother Westmoreland from Bougain speaking, and at this point of time we invite you to again to watch, to listen, to learn, and to receive salvation, that you might know the truth, and the truth will make you free. At this point of time, we are continuing into this new episode and series, The Rights Forum, and we are into the second segment of our new presentations on First Amendment threats. And in this one, we are continuing the education of the First Amendment. This is part 2. And this one, we're going to give you some videos of other prominent men in America. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are what they call talk show hosts, but people who are educated about the First Amendment. Some are representatives of government. And the fact is they understand the importance of the First Amendment. Now, what we have shown so far in our evaluation of the First Amendment, that America as a nation has a constitution that really makes it superior to many nations of the earth. And that many nations follow in the steps of America in regards to government, protection, and propagation of religious freedom, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. All in all, it protects the rights and the freedoms of human beings. And we know for sure that all laws that govern society in some way has been influenced by the 10 Commandments, or the codes, or the clauses of the 10 Commandments. Again, let me reiterate this fact, quoting from John Quincy Adams, one of the presidents and founding fathers of America. He says, "The law given from Sinai was a civil and municipal, as well as a moral and religious code. Laws essential to the existence of men in society, and most of which has been enacted by every nation which ever professed any code of laws." So it shows that after all, the 10 Commandments is binding upon men even in a social sense. And that the kind of Constitution of America, being Republican, it's supposed to propagate and protect the people's rights and the freedoms. This, again, is enforced and presented by Thomas Jefferson. He says this, speaking on the Constitution of America and the functional government. He says, I'm quoting from the book called The Real Thomas Jefferson, page 605. He says, "Believing that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, and that he owes account to no one or none other for his faith or his worship, and that the legislative powers of government Congress reach actions only and not opinions. So therefore he's saying therefore that Congress should only legislate actions. It cannot touch opinions or conscience or man's reasoning. He says, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that the legislator, which is Congress, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state, adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation in behalf of the rights of conscience. So the rights of conscience, that is protected under the First Amendment, that says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And of course the First Amendment also speaks and contains or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and petition the government for redress of grievances. Therefore, this First Amendment clause facilitates that government is not to legislate any religion or any religious dogma or any religious practice. Let us go to a certain amount of definitions. So when the First Amendment says an establishment of religion, what is it referring to? One, it is saying a government supported church, the act of making a particular religious sect or denomination the official church of a state or nation. So in America, there could be no official church of the state or the nation. The government cannot support or make a particular religious sect or denomination as belief national. That shows freedom of religious worship is across the board in America. But this is going out of action in America. Soon it will legislate religious laws. Soon it will legislate religious practice. Yes, it will legislate religious dogma. Prohibiting. What does prohibiting mean? It means Congress shall not prohibit, meaning it should not be forbidden, it should not be preventing or hindering the free exercise thereof. So the free exercise clause, there should be no forbidding, no preventing or hindering any of people's free exercise of religious belief. But this is being done subtly in America now. Our exercise, our practice, which is our use, our practice, or our application, or the act or process of taking part in anything religious. So there is now laws in America which forbid people from practicing or taking part in religious things. The state is against it. On what basis? There ought to be a separation of religion and legislation. Congress has no part to say in that. We will give you footage of these things being commented about in America. Okay? Or anything thereof, the exercise thereof, which is of religion. Okay? It shouldn't forbid for religious exercise. It shouldn't abridge, which is reducing, diminishing, or making less. So in any way where it is reducing your religious liberties, where it is diminishing the laws of religious practices, or making less the value of religion and its free exercise in America, that is against the First Amendment. When you talk about your free speech, it means your expression of your ideas spoken in words. Where the government does not want you to speak certain things, that's also against the First Amendment. It's against the press, which is the business or printing and publishing of anything that would be anti the concepts of the government. And these things are happening right now in America. They are going against these things. What about peaceably? It means then therefore without disturbance, no police, no security, no homeland security, no one should ever infringe upon your right for peaceably assembling. But these things are happening now. Petition to make formal requests, usually in writing. But worse yet, you can't do it in speech. but they don't acknowledge your request even in writing. Okay, so there's no redress for compensation or for some wrong done or for injury, because they don't have any regard for your person anymore. They will lock you up. They will issue unlawful warrants to confiscate the property. You see, so that your grievances or the conditions that cause you harm or distress is no longer acknowledged. People, things are going wrong in this America. So now, we leave you with some information here. Here are some videos highlighting the value of the First Amendment. Watch these things carefully. Be educated as you listen to these things carefully. Learn these things carefully, that you will have a clear knowledge of your position, of your rights and your freedoms. And may you receive salvation as to the value of your rights and your freedoms before the living God and heaven. May God richly bless you. Now, look at this video.
The First Amendment establishes freedom of religion, freedom of the press, and freedom of speech. It specifically says as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment can be categorized into 5 different areas. And it's important to know how these areas affect our lives and what it means to us today. From our early American history classes as youngsters, we learned that the early colonists left England to come to America in order to have freedom of religion. Well, freedom of religion in the First Amendment establishes that we can go to any church we want, any synagogue we want, any mosque we want. And the government cannot mandate a national religion or national church and make us practice that particular religion. The second part of the First Amendment is freedom of speech. That means literally that we can speak our mind against the government. And the government cannot make laws that prevent us from criticizing the government or our leaders. Frankly, we can say what we want about our government, whether they're doing a good job or a bad job, without fear of any laws preventing us or anything restricting our speech. The third part of the First Amendment is freedom of the press. That means that the government cannot control the press and control what we hear or see or read. That we can get information freely from multiple sources, listen to what we want, and if we don't like what the press is saying, that we can write a letter to the editor and get that printed, or we can pass out leaflets or flyers, or we can create our own web page and state our ideas or our beliefs. We have the freedom under the First Amendment to freedom of all press, any form that we establish. The fourth part of the First Amendment is freedom of assembly. That means that groups of people can gather privately or publicly, share ideas. It can be a social group, it can be a political group, it can be a religious group, and the First Amendment allows them to assemble and share ideas. They can be for the government, they can be against the government, and the First Amendment grants their freedom to assemble. The fifth part of the First Amendment is the right to petition. That means that if we have grievances with our government, that we can send those grievances to them. We can have petitions put together. We can send emails. We can write letters. We can have our opinions known to our governors, to our presidents, to our judges, to the folks that run our country. We have the ability to petition them and explain what we like and what we don't like. And that freedom is established in the First Amendment.
And look at this one. Look what has happened here. People are being fought against for the rights of the freedoms.
Well, I just want to know what.
I'm just telling you what the rule is.
So are we breaking the law right now?
It's a rule, okay?
Or are we breaking the law?
A rule to the university, a policy.
It's not American law.
No, it's not
Is this
a
public?
legal law, but it's a rule that the university has. And if you don't follow the rule, then you can be trespassed, which then would be a criminal thing.
So
Okay.
is there any written rule?
Yes.
Where do we look it up?
Yeah, it's if you go to Penn State's website, and can you not do that, please?
This is freedom of press.
I know, but you don't need to record.
Yes, I do, because if you violate my
You can
rights,
just go to Penn State's website and look on there for it's probably in the free speech zone section. It'll have the rules that you got to follow.
Okay.
Okay. And they just can't, we had a
so if we
complaint
keep
about it,
preaching
and
here,
that's all.
we'll get arrested?
No, you can talk. You're allowed to talk.
Well, on the bullhorn,
You
if
can't
we
use the
preach,
bullhorn.
we will
You
get
asked-
arrested?
It's possible.
Will we be arrested?
Yeah, it's possible. Okay? All right. I think I've talked to you a couple times this week, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, you guys have been cool. So.
I'm just saying, we don't want so if we send this to a lawyer then, okay. We can't hand out the tracts either, so we're not allowed to hand out the tracts either. So this is private property, sir? Is this
Just
private?
anytime that anything is distributed on campus, you need to get approval first.
Is this a private property or public property?
This is public.
Okay, so we're not able to distribute anything on campus
I'm saying you just need to get prior approval from someone
on public property.
on campus.
But this is still public property.
Yes, it is.
And so on public property, we have American rights that we're given to by the Constitution,
Yes.
which is freedom of press. So we shouldn't be allowed to record you then. Because the only thing that gives me a reason to record you is because of my bill of rights.
That's right.
And so why are you not telling me to turn off the camera?
God, I had the line on that.
Because I don't have a problem with you filming right now.
Then why do you have a problem with us distributing our religious
Because a
views?
complaint was made that somebody was down here using a bullhorn. We came down, talked to you guys, and just told you the procedure.
But you said the complaint was a bullhorn. Was a complaint on these?
Yes, and I saw him
Look.
distributing these.
Supervisor's coming out to talk to you, okay?
Okay.
That's how we'll go.
All right. So
Look at the expressions. Hear the ideas. These people know the facts.
Well, I guess the first thing one has to know about the First Amendment is that it wouldn't be there at all if Thomas Jefferson had not insisted. The Constitution had been pretty well drafted, and Jefferson, who was not at the Constitutional Convention and who was in Paris at that time, basically took the position that without a Bill of Rights, and in particular without a Bill of Rights that protected freedom of speech and freedom of the press, that he would not support the new Constitution. So a Bill of Rights, this Bill of Rights, and this First Amendment was an essential ingredient of the Constitution from the start. And from the start, it protected a number of different sorts of speech, beliefs, conscience, and the like. It protects freedom of religion, it protects freedom of speech, protects freedom of the press, protects freedom of assembly, all of them. And through the many years since the drafting of the Constitution and the adoption of the Bill of Rights, which of course starts with the First Amendment, through that time period, we've had many, many cases in the courts which have adopted, through interpretation, the First Amendment to new problems being sustained by the people and by the states as well. At the beginning, the First Amendment applied only to the federal government. After all, it does say, Congress shall make no law. After the Civil War and the adoption of amendments post-Civil War, they were held to apply to the states. But really not until late 1920s, early 1930s. So through most of American history, the First Amendment really had nothing to do with what states did and what state law turned out to be. There were state constitutions, but the federal Constitution, the First Amendment, applied only to the federal government. Where have we gone? Well, we've gone through the years in a direction generally of more protection. The First Amendment, remember, applies only as a protection against the government, not against private employers, not against friends or enemies or this or that. It is a protection against the government depriving people of their freedom of religion, the government telling them, in effect, who to pray or whether to pray at all, and in what way, and the government depriving people of freedom of speech or freedom of the press or freedom of assembly. I mean, at its core, it is a protection of human freedom by protecting against government overreaching. That was debated a lot when the First Amendment was adopted. Alexander Hamilton said, why do we need a Bill of Rights at all? Whoever said Congress could pass a law stripping the people of freedom of speech? They don't have the power to do it. So why do we need a Bill of Rights? Why do we need a First Amendment in the first place? And as I said, Jefferson insisted. Jefferson said any constitution for this country ought to say and say in so many words that there was a list of untouchable areas into which Congress could not transgress, into which the new federal national government couldn't go. And with that background, while even from the start there were problems, First Amendment problems. The Alien and Sedition Act was adopted in 1798, that close to the adoption of the Constitution and then the Bill of Rights. And it quite literally made it a crime to speak badly of the president, then John Adams. Not the vice president, because it was Jefferson. Even then we had politics. But it made it a crime to say critical things about the president, at least if they were, quote, false, unquote, which of course led to lots of issues about what's an opinion and what's a fact, what's true and what's false. But that law was our first law, which on the face of it violated the First Amendment. Jefferson called it living under a reign of witches. And ultimately, the verdict of history, as the Supreme Court came to say, the verdict of history was that the Alien and Sedition Acts were unconstitutional. And through the years, some acts of Congress have been held to be unconstitutional. Many acts, more recently of states, have been held to be unconstitutional. And in all these ways, the adoption of the First Amendment has been an incalculable protection of the public against overstepping.
Even though the Constitution begins with the words, "we the people," in reality it was we the states that created the federal government. Not wanting to give up too much of their power, the framers were careful to set forth the powers that the new government would have. These powers were all given to the Congress, since it is the Congress's job to write the laws. The President's job is to enforce the laws, and the courts were established to interpret them. But the real power in the federal government, the power to regulate human behavior, the power to write the laws, was given by the Constitution to the Congress. The Constitution gives Congress only 17 specific powers, areas in which it can write laws, like keep interstate commerce regular, establish post offices, raise an army and a navy, support the arts, establish a court system, mint and coin money, establish uniform standards for weights and measures, and collect excise taxes. The Congress was also told to stay out of the way of the states. Income taxes were forbidden. Congress was part-time and had no offices or staff. The 9th and 10th Amendments to the Constitution, which were soon added as a part of the Bill of Rights, made clear that Congress was only given the powers enumerated in the Constitution, and all remaining powers stayed with the states and the people. But it would not stay that way for long. The philosopher Lord Acton once wrote that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. He was right. Congress does not draw to its halls those who love liberty. It draws those who love power. We suffer from that today. After over 200 years of stretching the plain meaning of the words in the Constitution, we now have a Congress that thinks it can write any law, regulate any human activity, and tax any event, no matter what the Constitution says. But the Constitution was not written in order to enable Congress to right every wrong. It was written to define the federal government, to limit its behavior to the 17 specific delegated powers contained in the document, and to leave the remaining power in government to the states. Today, the states have lost virtually all their independence to the Congress, which has simply and regularly commanded them to do the things it wants done, or offers them money, like a bribe, to bend them to its will. Will we ever have a Congress that respects the states, protects our liberties, and stays within the confines of the Constitution?
Congress writes the laws of the land, and as long as it stays within the 17 powers given to it by the Constitution, our freedoms will be preserved. But it's the job of the President and the Supreme Court to make sure that the laws that Congress writes comply with the Constitution.
Thank you very much for listening to this program. May God richly bless you. This is the Tuesday Multimedia Ministry, and you shall know the truth. Watch, listen, learn, for everybody wants freedom. And
you
God alone can give us that freedom.
shall know
Amen.
the truth. The loud cry of the third angel's message to the world.
Everybody wants freedom. Freedom to teach, freedom of speech. We have a constitution with freedom of religion. Respect our rights, protect our rights. We ask the present government to make nobody